Have you ever been alone on a stormy night, the house creaking and groaning under the weight of the wind, rain lashing against the windows, and an eerie sense of unease creeping up your spine? If you have, then you'll understand the terror of being home alone during a storm. Let me tell you about a night I will never forget. A night that still haunts me whenever I hear the rumble of distant thunder. It was a late October evening, and the weather forecast had predicted heavy rain and thunderstorms throughout the night. My parents had to attend an out-of-town event and would not be back until the following afternoon. They left me in charge, confident that at 17, I was responsible enough to handle myself. I assured them I'd be fine and even looked forward to having the house to myself for the night. The storm began just after sunset. The sky, already dark from the autumn evening, turned an ominous shade of gray. As the first drops of rain hit the roof, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I shook off the feeling, attributing it to the sudden chill in the air, and made my way to the living room. I planned to binge watch some of my favorite horror movies. Ironic, I know, considering what was about to unfold. I was halfway through my second movie when the storm intensified. The wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, and the rain drummed against the windows with relentless fury. Thunder boomed so loudly it felt like the house was shaking. I turned up the volume to drown out the noise, immersing myself in the on-screen terror to distract from the storm outside. Around 11, the power went out. The TV flickered off, plunging the house into darkness. I cursed under my breath, fumbling for my phone to use its flashlight. I made my way to the kitchen to find some candles. The eerie silence of the house, interrupted only by the sound of rain and thunder, was unnerving. I lit a few candles and placed them around the living room, their flickering light casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. I tried to get comfortable, scrolling through my phone to check the weather updates. There was nothing new, just more warnings about the severity of the storm. I decided to text my parents to let them know the power was out, but there was no signal. Typical, I thought, just when I needed it the most. As I sat there, the house began to feel different. The usual creaks and groans seemed louder, more pronounced. The shadows cast by the candlelight seemed to move in unnatural ways. I told myself it was just my imagination, fueled by the horror movies and the storm outside. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from upstairs. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze, listening intently. Another bang, followed by what sounded like footsteps. My rational mind tried to come up with explanations. Maybe a window had blown open, or something had fallen. But deep down, I knew those were footsteps. I stood up slowly, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate, as if someone was walking down the hallway above me. I grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a metal candlestick, and made my way to the staircase. Each step I took was tentative, my heart pounding in my ears, my breath shallow. At the top of the stairs, I paused, straining to hear. The footsteps had stopped. I waited, every second stretching into an eternity. Then, there it was again, a soft thud, coming from my parents' bedroom. I tightened my grip on the candlestick and walked down the hall. The door to their room was ajar, a thin sliver of darkness peeking through. I pushed the door open with trembling hands. The room was empty, but the window was wide open, rain pouring in and pooling on the floor. I hurried to close it, my mind racing. Had someone been in here? Were they still in the house? I checked the closet and under the bed, but found nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched persisted. I decided to check the rest of the house, starting with the other bedrooms. Each room was empty, the windows securely shut. The only place left was the attic. I stood at the base of the attic stairs, staring up into the darkness. The thought of going up there filled me with dread, but I had to be sure. I climbed the narrow steps, the air growing colder with each step. At the top, I pulled the cord to turn on the light. The bulb flickered weakly before casting a dim glow over the attic's contents. Boxes and old furniture were piled haphazardly, casting strange shadows in the corners. I walked through the attic, checking behind every box and under every sheet, but found nothing. Relieved but still on edge, I descended the stairs and returned to the living room. I sat on the couch, trying to calm my racing heart. I told myself it was just the storm playing tricks on me. Maybe the wind had blown the window open, and the noises were just the house settling. I tried to convince myself of this, but the unease lingered. Then I heard it again, a soft creak, coming from the kitchen. I turned slowly, the candlelight flickering ominously. I saw a shadow move across the doorway. My blood ran cold. I wasn't alone. Someone was in the house with me. I held my breath, listening. The shadow moved again, followed by the sound of something being dragged across the floor. I had to make a decision: stay and confront whatever was in the kitchen, or try to escape. I chose the latter, knowing that getting out of the house was my best chance. I crept towards the front door, moving as quietly as possible. Just as I reached for the doorknob, it turned from the outside. The door swung open and I screamed, raising the candlestick to defend myself. But it wasn't an intruder. It was my neighbor, Mr. Henderson. He looked as startled as I was. "I heard a noise and saw your lights were out," he explained. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." Relief flooded through me. I lowered the candlestick, feeling foolish for my overreaction. I explained about the noises and the open window, and he offered to check the house with me. We went through each room again, but found nothing. He even checked the attic, but there was no sign of anyone. Satisfied that I was safe, Mr. Henderson left, promising to keep an eye on the house until my parents returned. I locked the door behind him and went back to the living room, exhausted and still a little shaken. I decided to try and get some sleep, hoping the morning light would chase away the remnants of fear. As I lay on the couch, listening to the rain and the distant rumble of thunder, I finally started to relax. The house was quiet, the storm beginning to subside. I closed my eyes, drifting off to sleep. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke to a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a whisper, so close it felt like it was right next to my ear. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked around. The candles had burned out, and the room was pitch black. Then I heard it again, a whisper, coming from the direction of the kitchen. I grabbed my phone, using its light to guide me as I crept towards the sound. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. The whispering continued, soft and unintelligible, sending chills down my spine. I reached the kitchen and shone the light around. At first, I saw nothing. Then, in the corner of the room, I saw a figure. It was small, hunched over, and its features were obscured by the darkness. I froze, unable to move or even scream. The figure slowly turned towards me, and I saw its face. It was pale and gaunt, eyes sunken deep into its skull. It opened its mouth, and the whispering grew louder, filling my head with a cacophony of voices. I stumbled back, dropping my phone, the light going out as it hit the floor. I ran from the kitchen, blindly fumbling my way through the dark house. I could hear the whispering following me, growing louder and more frantic. I made it to the front door and flung it open, sprinting out into the rain. I didn't stop running until I reached Mr. Henderson's house, pounding on his door and begging for help. Mr. Henderson let me in, and I told him everything. He called the police, who searched my house thoroughly. They found no evidence of an intruder or any sign of the figure I had seen. They chalked it up to my imagination, a combination of the storm and the dark playing tricks on my mind. But I knew what I had seen and heard. I stayed with Mr. Henderson until my parents returned the next day. They were concerned but reassured me that it was just a bad dream. Maybe it was, but to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something was in that house with me, something not of this world. Now, every time a storm rolls in, I remember that night. I remember the fear, the whispering, and the figure in the kitchen. And I wonder if, one day, it will come back for me. So, if you ever find yourself alone on a stormy night, be careful. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself.